All right, so that's what we did application-wise. So architects, when you guys are thinking, how am I actually going to architect this new application or transition my existing application out to the cloud? I'm going to present these slides kind of like an order of operations of what I'm thinking about before, as I'm selecting components to start building this out to figure out what I can leverage. And again, I'm thinking microservices, so looking at components that I can slap together that we can test out, validate, and then grow and expand if they prove out. So the first thing that I'm picking today, and I know it's a little bit bleeding edge, but serverless, okay? But I don't have to worry about the app service plan, figuring out what my scale up and scale out conditions are. Are they CPU based? Are they RAM based? Are they, I mean, you've got all these different variations that they can get some very complex plans to get that elastic scalability. If I can pick services that just work, and I only pay for the function, the CPU time, the RAM time, the storage time, 10 cents for 5 days type of scenarios, I'm all over it, right? I've got no IT overhead. I don't have to patch any operating systems. I don't have to worry about configuring plans and lots of application settings. It's literally write my code and go. I worked on this on Monday late at night after a long day of work. I needed to start working on this because that's, you know, put things off to the last minute like every good human being. But I'm working on this and I'm going, okay, put some stuff together, got my function up there, got the index HTML file kind of going. Then I got tired, went to bed, got up the next morning and said, I'm going to go check this. And I went to go load the page, and the index page came right up, but it also has that function call to go get me the results. And that took a good 20, 30 seconds before I saw the first one. I was kind of like, that kind of sucked. Then I hit refresh and it came right back. And I was like, okay, now we're good. But that's your spin up time. And the trade-off from here is because since I'm not reserving that power and I'm trying to optimize my costs, if it's not being used, Microsoft's going to do everything possible to scale it down as much as possible to reduce their costs. And once it's being used, it'll spin back up. So you know what I did? I installed Application Insights, and I ran a basically a availability test that runs every 5 minutes and pings my web page. So now it's never spun completely down. This time when I brought it back up, the first time I think it took maybe 2 or 3 seconds for the first one to come up, and then it was pretty snappy after that. But that was enough for me to say, okay, they spun it down enough to where I can live with it.
Do they charge you for that?
Well, yeah, because since I called that, I'm also making an API call, right, which is costing it. So to be completely honest, this was a trick that I did just the other night to see what it would do. I checked my cost at that day. I was at 2 cents, and now I'm at 10 cents. So it did start going up faster because of the compute time. But it's one of those where I can kind of balance it, saying, hey, if I don't want to be in that situation where I want a customer to wait 30 seconds before they get their initial page load because we've been sleeping all night, I'm willing to pay that extra, well, Tim's willing to pay that extra 8 cents.
So are you controlling that tear down and build up with Microsoft?
It's pretty much Microsoft, right? I'm relying on them doing that. And they're going to, again, for me, the compute time is flat. I'm paying for the consumption. If my users are using it, I'm paying for the CPU time. And I think I'm also paying for the RAM time, and that's really about it. And it's on a per request basis. So when that API request gets called, I'm getting charged, and it's a small cent. If I'm not using it at all, I'm not getting paid at all for even having or I'm not getting charged at all for even having my code running up there. So they're spinning it down as much as possible to manage it. That's a trade-off.
I think what we're using what? Redis cache API calls.
I'm not even using Redis cache. I'm not. I can, but I didn't plan. Yeah, there was no need in this particular one. Could I have done that? Yes, I could have. But the issue that I saw with it is it wasn't when I really looked at it, it wasn't the issue of could I get the data fast enough because document DB was sleeping. It was the function call. So it was the API call that was slow. So even if I had Redis cache here, it still makes the API call first. The API would call Redis before it calls document DB. So it's still going to be slow. So that's why I was like, no, I'm not going to throw a cache in there. You know, the question was around function security, meaning what am I able to do, establish other connections beyond the standard HTTP ports or the ports that are provided for Microsoft. The answer, honestly, is I don't know. I haven't really tried it. However, I expect it to be exactly the same as Lambdas. Remember what I've given up. I don't control most of the security. I don't control most of the infrastructure and the architecture. So router configurations, switch configurations, server configurations, virtual firewalls on the individual servers that these are running on are pretty much out of my hands. And so I know for sure that I have the bindings that we saw. What can I connect to outside of the world? I have HTTP, HTTPS. I have the database connections that are, I wouldn't be surprised if they were saying within the Azure scope, right? So kind of like a DMZ to a private subnet. and it's going to be pretty much limited to that. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know for sure, but that would be where I guess. And so again, this is one of those where, from an architecture perspective, I'm going to try this first. If I run into something like that doesn't work, I'm going to test that, and if it doesn't work, okay, I'm going to look at another option. But I'm going to start here. This is where you're going to get the biggest bang for the buck, the most scalability at the lowest cost, coming together from an application perspective.